The night she whispered her death sentence to cold marble, she had no idea that death itself was listening. Clara Zimmerman stood alone in the moonlit sculpture garden of Ravenhart Castle, a sprawling Gothic fortress-turned-museum perched on the cliffs outside the city. It was 3 a.m, an hour past the end of her shift as night security and guide, but she had stayed behind as she often did, wandering among the statues and fountains like they were old friends. The garden stretched before her in silvered shadows, hedges trimmed into severe geometric shapes, gravel paths winding between marble figures frozen in eternal poses of valor and grief. She approached her favorite, a knight in full armor kneeling with his sword planted before him, head bowed in supplication or sorrow. The sculptor had captured something unbearably human in the tilt of that helmed head. "Hello again," she said softly, her breath misting in the autumn air. She wore her uniform jacket over jeans, her dark hair pulled back in a loose braid, and she looked tired in a way that went deeper than missed sleep. At 24, she should have had years ahead of her, but the diagnosis 3 months ago had rewritten that story. 6 months, maybe a year if the experimental treatment worked. She had told no one, not her sister in California, not her co-workers, not even Dr. Reeves, who kept leaving concerned messages about starting more aggressive therapy. She sank onto the stone bench facing the night, pulling her jacket tighter. "I got the test results back today," she told the statue, her voice barely above a whisper. "The treatment isn't working. The lesions are growing faster than they thought. They want me to start something else, something that will make me so sick I won't be able to work, won't be able to think, won't be able to be myself for whatever time I have left." Her throat tightened. "And I don't want that. I don't want to spend my last months poisoning myself just to maybe have a few more weeks. I want to feel alive while I still am." Tears slipped down her cheeks, hot against her cold skin. "I'm so scared," she admitted to the unhearing stone. "I'm terrified of the pain, of fading away, of being forgotten. I work here surrounded by art and history, all these beautiful things people made to be remembered, and I'll just disappear like I never existed at all. It isn't fair. I'm only 24. I wanted more time." Behind the statue, so motionless he might have been carved from marble himself, Mordecai Morgrath listened to every word. He had not meant to eavesdrop. He had come to the garden as he did most nights, slipping through the shadows of the castle he had built 4 centuries ago, before it had been seized and converted and opened to tourists who gawked at his ancestral home without knowing its true master still walked its halls. He was ancient, powerful, and utterly alone by choice, the vampire king of the northern territories, though his kingdom had dwindled to shadows and secrecy in this modern age. He appeared as a man in his early 30s, tall and lean, with hair so pale it looked like moonlight made solid, falling straight to his shoulders. His skin was alabaster white, his features sharp and aristocratic, his eyes a luminous silver that could pierce through darkness or soul. He wore black as always, modern clothes tailored to perfection, moving with a predator's fluid grace. He had noticed the human woman before. She worked night shifts, often staying late, and she spoke to the artwork with a tenderness that had caught his attention. He found her fascinating, this mortal who treated stone and paint like confidants, who clearly loved beautiful things not for their monetary value, but for their existence. He had watched her from the shadows more than once, drawn by something he could not name, some quality of light she carried that pushed back against his centuries of darkness. But now, hearing her confession, he stood frozen, dying. She was dying. This bright young creature who whispered to statues, and she had told no one. The scent of her despair perfumed the air, salt and sorrow, and underneath it, the warm pulse of her blood, slightly off in its rhythm. Yes, he could hear it now, the faint irregularity that spoke of illness woven through her flesh. How had he not noticed before? Something twisted in his chest, an old wound reopening. He had not felt anything like this in over a century, not since Elowen. Clara wiped her eyes, laughing shakily. "Listen to me, spilling my secrets to a statue. I really am losing it." She stood, touching the marble knight's shoulder gently. "Thanks for listening anyway. You're a better confidant than most of the living." She took a breath, steadying herself, and turned to walk back toward the castle. Mordecai stepped from the shadows. "Wait," he said, his voice low and accented with something older than modern language. Clara spun, her heart leaping into her throat, and found herself facing the most striking man she had ever seen. For a moment she could not speak, could only stare at him standing there in the moonlight like something conjured from her imagination. White hair, white skin, dressed in black that made him look like a figure from a romantic painting, all sharp, elegant lines and ethereal beauty. His eyes caught the light strangely, reflecting like an animal's. "I'm sorry," he said, and he sounded genuinely regretful. "I did not mean to intrude on your privacy. I come here often at night. I was here before you arrived." Clara's face flushed hot with mortification. "Oh God, you heard." It was not a question. Yes. He did not insult her with a lie. She wanted to run, to disappear, but something in his face stopped her. He looked at her with an intensity that made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in months. Not with pity, but with recognition, as if her pain mattered to him in some personal way. "Please don't tell anyone," she said finally. "I work here. If they knew I was sick, they'd fire me, or worse, treat me like I'm already a ghost. I can't bear that." "I would never betray your confidence," Mordecai said, and the solemnity in his tone made it sound like a sacred vow. "Your secret is safe with me." He moved closer, slowly, as if approaching something rare and easily startled. "I am called Mordecai. I come here to walk among the old things. They remind me of a time when the world was different." "Clara," she offered, her curiosity beginning to outweigh her embarrassment. "I'm a night guide and security here. I've worked here for 2 years, and I've never seen you before. Do you have some kind of special access pass?" She was grasping for normal conversation, anything to ground herself. A faint smile touched his lips, and it transformed his austere face into something breathtaking. "Something like that. The owners and I have an understanding. I am permitted to visit after hours." "Must be nice to have connections," Clara said, attempting lightness, though her voice still shook slightly. "Most people have to settle for the daytime tours." "I am not fond of daylight," Mordecai said, which was perhaps the greatest understatement he had made in 200 years. "The night suits me better. And you? Why do you stay after your shift ends?" Clara looked back at the garden, the statues standing sentinel in the darkness. "Because it's peaceful. Because during the day this place is full of people taking photos and not really looking at anything. But at night it's just the art and me. I can hear it breathing, if that makes sense. Everything here has a story, a history. When I'm here, I feel connected to something larger than myself, something that will outlast me." She stopped, realizing what she had said. "Sorry, that got morbid fast." "Not morbid," Mordecai said quietly. "Beautiful. You see what most mortals miss? That art is a conversation across time. The sculptor who carved that knight has been dead for 300 years, but when you touch his work, you touch him. In that way, he is immortal." "Exactly," Clara breathed, turning to him with sudden animation, her earlier distress momentarily forgotten. "That's exactly it. You understand." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a recognition that went deeper than shared aesthetic appreciation. Mordecai felt it like a lance through his ribs, this sudden, fierce desire to know everything about her, to preserve the light in her eyes, to keep death from claiming her the way it claimed all mortal things eventually, far too soon. The feeling terrified him, because he knew where it led. "I should go," Clara said reluctantly, breaking the moment. "It's late, and I have another shift tomorrow night." "May I walk you to your car?" Mordecai asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, it's parked in the staff lot around back." They walked together through the garden, taking the gravel path that curved around the castle's east wing. Clara found herself stealing glances at him, this strange, beautiful man who appeared out of nowhere and spoke like someone from another century. There was something otherworldly about him, something that made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with fascination. "Will you be here tomorrow night?" she asked as they reached the small parking lot where her elderly sedan sat alone under a flickering light. "Would you like me to be?" Mordecai asked. "Yes," Clara admitted. I would. If you don't mind talking to someone who apparently confesses her life story to strangers in gardens. I would consider it an honor, Mordecai said with old-fashioned formality that should have sounded ridiculous, but somehow didn't. Until tomorrow, Clara. She smiled at him, a real smile that lit her whole face, and got into her car. He watched until her taillights disappeared down the long drive, then turned and walked back into the castle through walls that would have stopped any other intruder. His mind churned with dangerous thoughts. She was dying. He could save her. One bite, one turning, and she would live forever, healthy and strong and beyond the reach of human illness. The solution was so simple, so obvious, and so utterly impossible. He returned to his private chambers deep beneath the castle, rooms the museum's owners knew nothing about, accessed through passages hidden behind false walls and forgotten doors. The space was a contrast of old and new, antique furniture and modern technology, walls lined with books accumulated over lifetimes. He poured himself a glass of blood, synthetic and unsatisfying, and stood at the window that looked out onto the underground courtyard, a space open to the sky through a clever shaft that brought moonlight but never sun. He could not offer to turn her. He had sworn, after Alawan. The memory rose like bile. Alawan, who had been dying of consumption, who he had loved with the passionate intensity of a much younger vampire, he had turned her without asking, certain that his gift of immortality would be welcomed, that she would forgive the presumption once she understood she was saved. But Elowen had not wanted saving, had not wanted eternal life as one of the creatures she had been taught to fear. She had hated him for it, hated herself, and eventually she had walked into the sunrise, choosing death on her own terms rather than the immortality he had forced upon her. Her final words to him still echoed, "You stole my choice. You stole my death. I can never forgive you." After that, Mordecai had sworn never to turn another human without their explicit, informed consent. But how could he offer such a thing to Clara? How could he reveal what he was and what he could do without the revelation itself being a kind of coercion, a temptation no dying person could resist? She would accept to save herself, not because she truly wanted to become what he was. It would be Elowen all over again. So he would say nothing. He would befriend her, spend what time she had left with her, and then he would grieve alone, as he had done for every mortal he had ever cared for. It was the only honorable path. But God help him. It was going to destroy him. The next night, Clara arrived at work with her heart beating faster than usual, and not because of the illness. She told herself she was being ridiculous, building up a chance encounter into something significant, but she could not stop thinking about Mordecai. The way he had looked at her, the way he had spoken, the strange formality and the unexpected understanding. She had felt more seen in 5 minutes with him than in months with anyone else. She went through her shift on autopilot, leading 2 tour groups through the castle's public rooms, reciting facts about medieval architecture and Renaissance paintings, while her mind wandered. When the last tour ended and her co-worker James headed home, she changed out of her uniform blazer into a soft gray sweater and made her way to the garden. Mordecai was already there, standing near the fountain at the garden's center, looking up at the stone angels frozen in mid-flight. He turned when he heard her footsteps on the gravel, and the smile that crossed his face was small but genuine. "You came," he said. "So did you," Clara replied, feeling absurdly pleased. "I promised I would," Mordecai said simply. "I do not break my promises." They walked together through the garden, and Clara found herself talking more freely than she had with anyone in years. She told him about studying art history in college, about the sister she loved but felt distant from, about her dream of one day curating an exhibition of forgotten female artists from the medieval period. He listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed he was truly interested, offering observations that revealed a stunning depth of historical knowledge. "You talk about the Renaissance like you were there," Clara said at one point, laughing. Mordecai's expression flickered with something complicated. "I have studied it extensively. It is a particular interest of mine." "What do you do?" Clara asked. "For work, I mean. Or are you independently wealthy and just wandering around castle gardens for fun?" "Something like that," Mordecai said evasively. "I have investments. I do not need to work in the traditional sense." "Must be nice," Clara said without resentment. I'm barely making rent on what they pay me here. Guilt twisted through Mordecai. He owned the very ground beneath her feet, the castle itself through a series of shell companies, and here she was struggling to survive. If you ever need anything, he began carefully, I have resources I would be happy to share. I don't take charity, Clara said quickly, then softened her tone. But thank you, really. It means a lot that you'd offer. They talked until nearly 4 a.m, and when Clara finally said she needed to sleep, Mordecai walked her to her car again. This time, before she got in, she turned to him. Can I ask you something personal? She said. Of course. Why are you being so kind to me? You don't know me. For all you know, I could be a terrible person. Mordecai looked at her, this dying girl who thought herself unremarkable, and felt his heart ache with all the things he could not say. I do not believe you are a terrible person. And perhaps I am kind because kindness is rare enough in this world that when we have the opportunity to offer it, we should. Clara studied his face, searching for something. You seem sad, she said quietly. Like you're carrying something heavy. Old wounds, Mordecai admitted. They never quite heal. I know something about that, Clara said. She reached out impulsively and touched his hand. His skin was cool, cooler than it should have been, but she attributed it to the night air. Thank you for being here. I didn't realize how much I needed someone to talk to. Her touch burned through him like sunlight, painful and precious. Tomorrow? He asked. Tomorrow, she agreed. Their pattern established itself over the following weeks. Clara would finish her shift, and Mordecai would be waiting somewhere in the garden or the castle's quieter galleries. They would walk and talk for hours, conversations ranging from philosophy to art to the small details of daily life. Clara told him about books she loved, music that moved her, childhood memories of visiting museums with her mother before the cancer took her at age 12. Mordecai reciprocated with carefully edited stories from his long life, framing centuries-old experiences as historical interests or things he had read. Clara was falling in love. She recognized it happening and could not stop it, did not want to stop it even though it seemed cosmically unfair to find this connection now, when her time was running out. Mordecai was unlike anyone she had ever met, thoughtful and intense, treating her like she mattered, like her thoughts and feelings were precious. He made her laugh with dry observations about modern society, made her think with questions that challenged her assumptions, made her feel alive in a way she had forgotten was possible. She did not know that Mordecai was falling just as hard, torturing himself with every smile she gave him, every moment of her company that he stole like a thief, knowing the treasure would be reclaimed. He watched her growing weaker, saw the shadows deepening under her eyes, noticed the way she sometimes had to sit and catch her breath. The illness was progressing. Time was running out. 2 months into their nightly meetings, Clara showed up to the garden and immediately collapsed on the bench, her face pale and drawn. Mordecai was at her side in an instant, moving faster than humanly possible, though she was too dazed to notice. What happened? He demanded, his voice sharp with fear. I'm okay, Clara said automatically, though she clearly was not. Just a bad day. I had to go to the doctor this morning. There was some internal bleeding. They stopped it, but I'm tired. You should be home resting, Mordecai said, struggling to keep his tone even when what he wanted was to rage at the universe for its cruelty. I wanted to see you, Clara said simply. I don't have enough time left to waste it sleeping. The words hit him like a physical blow. Clara, I know what's happening to me, Mordecai, she said, looking up at him with eyes that were far too knowing. I know I'm getting worse. The doctors have stopped making optimistic predictions. We're talking about weeks now, maybe a month or two. And I don't want to spend whatever time I have left being careful and afraid. I want to spend it here, with you, feeling something good. Mordecai knelt before her, taking her hands in his, unable to maintain distance in the face of her admission. You should be with your family, people who have known you for years, not a stranger you met in a garden. You're not a stranger, Clara said fiercely. You're the person who understands me better than anyone else in the world. You're the person I think about every moment I'm not with you. She stopped, her courage failing. "What am I?" Mordecai asked, his voice barely audible. "You're the person I love," Clara whispered. "I know it's insane. I know we've only known each other a few weeks, but I do. I love you, Mordecai, and I needed to tell you before it's too late." For a long moment, Mordecai could not speak. Then he rose, pulling her gently to her feet, and cupped her face in his hands. "Clara, He stopped, decades of restraint warring with desperate need. "I love you as well, so much that it terrifies me." He kissed her then, softly, carefully, afraid of his own strength, afraid of breaking her. She leaned into him, her arms going around his neck, and the kiss deepened into something raw and necessary. When they finally broke apart, both were trembling. "I'm cold," Clara said, shivering. "I'm always cold now." Mordecai took off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, then gathered her carefully into his arms. "Let me take you home," he said. "Not yet," Clara protested. "I want to stay with you." "Then I will take you to my home," Mordecai said, making a decision. "It is warmer, and you can rest properly." Clara was too tired to question how he had a home in the castle. He carried her through passages she had never seen, down stairs that seemed to descend forever, into the hidden chambers beneath the museum. When they emerged into his private rooms, Clara looked around in wonder at the impossible space, the luxury and history combined. "How is this here?" she asked. "I thought I knew every part of this building." "It is very old," Mordecai said, which was true, "and very secret." He laid her down on a velvet sofa near the fireplace, which he kindled with a touch that Clara attributed to hidden gas fixtures. "Rest now." Clara's eyes were already closing. "Stay with me?" "Always," Mordecai promised, settling into a chair beside her, watching the firelight play across her face. She fell asleep almost immediately, her breathing shallow and irregular. Mordecai sat vigil, his mind churning. She loved him. She had said it, this dying mortal girl, and he loved her back with an intensity that made mockery of his centuries of existence. He wanted to save her. The solution was right there, in his veins, in his bite. One turning, and she would be beyond death's reach. But he could not offer. He could not break his vow. The memory of Eloin's hatred, her final sunrise, kept him chained. Unless she asked. The thought whispered through him like temptation. If she asked, if she came to him knowing what he was and requesting transformation of her own free will, then he would not be repeating his mistake. She would have agency, choice, the thing he had stolen from Eloin. But that meant revealing himself. It meant telling her he was a vampire, that immortality was possible, and trusting that her decision would be genuinely free and not just the desperate grasp of a drowning person at a life preserver. Could anyone in her position truly make a free choice? Was the offer itself a form of coercion? He had no answers, only the terrible knowledge that time was running out, and soon the choice would be made for both of them by death. Clara woke hours later to find herself in an unfamiliar room, wrapped in a soft blanket, with Mordecai sitting in the chair beside her exactly as he had been, as if he had not moved at all. "What time is it?" she asked groggily. "Nearly noon," Mordecai said. "You slept for 8 hours. How do you feel?" "Better," Clara admitted. "Warmer. Where are we exactly?" "In the old undercroft of the castle," Mordecai said. "These chambers were built in the 16th century by the castle's original owner. I have permission to use them." Clara sat up, looking around more carefully. "This is incredible. The museum should know about this. These furnishings, these books, they're priceless." "They are private," Mordecai said firmly. "I would appreciate it if you did not mention this place to anyone." Clara studied him, noting the tension in his posture, the guardedness that had crept into his voice. "You have a lot of secrets, don't you?" "Yes," Mordecai said simply. "Will you ever tell me any of them?" Clara asked. Mordecai looked at her, this brave, dying girl who loved him, and felt the weight of his secrets crushing him. "Perhaps," he said carefully. "If the time comes, when I believe you would want to know. I want to know everything about you, Clara said. I want to understand why you look at me sometimes, like I'm breaking your heart. Because you are, Mordecai said, the words escaping before he could stop them. Because I am watching you fade, and I am powerless to prevent it. Clara reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. You're not powerless. You're giving me something beautiful to hold on to. These past weeks with you have been the best of my life, Mordecai. You've made me happier than I have any right to be. You have every right to happiness, Mordecai said fiercely. You have every right to a long life, to decades of joy and discovery. It is not fair that you are being denied that. Life isn't fair, Clara said with the tired wisdom of someone who had learned that lesson young. My mother died when I was 12. I was diagnosed with an incurable illness at 24. Fair doesn't enter into it. We get what we get, and we make the best of it. What if there was a way? Mordecai asked, the words dragging themselves out of him against his better judgment. What if there was a way to save you, to heal you completely, but it would require you to change in fundamental ways? Would you want to know about it? Clara frowned, confused. What are you talking about? Some kind of experimental treatment? Mordecai stood abruptly, pacing away from her. Never mind. I should not have spoken. Mordecai, you're scaring me, Clara said. If there's some kind of treatment option I don't know about, you have to tell me. It is not medicine, Mordecai said, his back to her. It is something else entirely, and I am not certain I should burden you with the knowledge of it. Clara stood, swaying slightly but determined. That's not your decision to make. If there's something that could help me, I have a right to know. Even if the cure is worse than the disease? Mordecai asked, turning to face her. Even if it would change everything about your life, separate you from humanity, make you something other than what you are? You're talking in riddles, Clara said, frustrated. Just tell me plainly. Mordecai closed his eyes, fighting with himself. When he opened them again, they were glowing faintly silver in the dim room. I am not human, Clara. I have not been human for over 400 years. I am what your stories call a vampire, though the reality is both more and less than the legends suggest. And I could make you like me. I could turn you, heal your illness, make you immortal. But you would be vampire as well, would drink blood, shun sunlight, live forever in darkness. And I swore I would never offer this to anyone again after the last time I did. The person I turned hated me for it and chose death over the immortality I forced upon them. Silence fell between them like a curtain. Clara stared at him, her face cycling through expressions too quickly to read. Disbelief, fear, confusion, wonder. You're serious, she said finally. You really believe you're a vampire? I do not believe. I know, Mordecai said quietly. He moved with inhuman speed to the far side of the room, then back, a blur of motion. He picked up a heavy oak chair with one hand, as if it weighed nothing. I am faster and stronger than any human. I do not age. I do not fall ill. I have lived through centuries, watched empires rise and fall, seen the world transform in ways you cannot imagine. And yes, I drink blood, though in this modern age, I have access to synthetic alternatives. He gestured to a small refrigerator in the corner. Clara sank back onto the sofa, her mind reeling. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was impossible, a delusion, or a cruel joke. But she thought of all the small oddnesses she had noticed and dismissed. His pale skin and hair, his cold touch, the way he only ever appeared at night, how he spoke of history with the intimacy of personal memory, the strange old-fashioned formality of his manners, the way he had appeared in the garden with no sound, moved with uncanny grace. Prove it, she said. Show me something I can't explain away. Mordecai hesitated, then opened his mouth. His canines extended, lengthening into unmistakable fangs. His eyes blazed silver bright in the darkness. He looked terrifying and beautiful, an apex predator wearing a human face. Clara gasped, pressing back against the sofa cushions. For a moment, pure instinctive fear flooded her. Then she looked past the fangs and the glowing eyes and saw that the expression on his face was not threatening but desperately vulnerable. He looked like a man waiting for condemnation. "It's real," she whispered. "You're really a vampire. Vampires are real." "Yes," Mordecai said, his fangs retracting, his eyes dimming back to normal. "And I am sorry to burden you with this knowledge, but you asked, and I could not lie to you anymore." Clara's mind was racing, connecting dots, understanding flooding through her. "The person you turned before. You said they never forgave you. What happened?" Mordecai moved to the window, looking out at nothing. "Her name was Alawan. She was dying of consumption, wasting away before my eyes, and I loved her desperately. I thought I was saving her. I turned her without asking, without warning, and when she woke as a vampire, she was horrified. She had been raised in a time when vampires were considered demons, soulless monsters. She believed I had damned her to hell. I tried to convince her otherwise, tried to teach her to live as I do, but she could not accept it. After 3 months, she walked into the sunrise. She chose true death over the immortality I had given her." His voice was hollow with old grief. Her last words to me were that I had stolen her choice, her death, and she would never forgive me. I swore then that I would never turn another without their explicit, informed consent, that I would never again make that decision for someone else, no matter how much I wanted to save them. Clara stood on shaking legs and walked to him. "And that's why you didn't tell me before. Because you were afraid that telling me, offering it, would be a kind of coercion, that I would only agree because I'm desperate to live." "Yes," Mordecai said. "How can anyone facing death make a truly free choice about immortality? The temptation is too great. You would agree to escape your illness, not because you genuinely want to become what I am." "That's not fair to me," Clara said quietly. "You're deciding what I'm capable of choosing, what my reasoning would be. You're trying to protect me from a decision you think I can't handle." Mordecai turned to her, anguished. "I am trying not to repeat my greatest mistake." "I'm not Alawan," Clara said. "I don't know what she was like, what her beliefs were, but I'm me. I'm a 24-year-old woman in the 21st century who works in a museum and talks to statues and is dying of a degenerative neurological disease. And yes, I want to live. Of course I want to live. But I also want to know what I'm choosing, what it would mean, what I would be giving up and gaining." "You would give up sunlight," Mordecai said, his voice rough. "You would never again feel its warmth on your face. You would give up human food, survive only on blood. You would watch everyone you know age and die while you remain unchanged. You would be separate from humanity, living in shadows, forever marked as predator. The isolation can be unbearable." "And what would I gain?" Clara asked. "Time," Mordecai said. "Centuries of it if you are careful. Strength, speed, senses far beyond human. Perfect health, your illness purged from your body the moment you turn. The ability to witness history, to learn endlessly, to master any skill given enough years. And you would not be alone in it. I would be with you, teaching you, caring for you, loving you for as long as you wanted me." "Forever seems like a good start," Clara said with a shaky smile. "Do not joke," Mordecai said desperately. "This is not a decision to make lightly or quickly. You need time to think, to consider all the ramifications." "How much time do I have?" Clara asked. "How long before the illness takes the choice away from me completely?" Mordecai looked at her, really looked, using his vampire senses to assess the damage ravaging her body. What he saw made his dead heart clench. "Weeks," he said quietly. "A month at most. The bleeding you experienced was a sign of rapid progression. Your brain is deteriorating faster than the doctors realize." Clara nodded, oddly calm. "Then we don't have the luxury of long philosophical debates, do we? I need to decide soon whether I want to die as a human or live as a vampire." "You should take what time we have," Mordecai said. "Ask me anything. Learn what this life truly means. I will not rush you." "Okay," Clara agreed. "Then tell me everything." They spent the next week in a strange new rhythm. Clara continued working her night shifts. maintained the appearance of normalcy, but spent every free moment with Mordecai in his hidden chambers. He told her everything about vampire existence, holding nothing back. He explained the blood hunger and how it was managed, the sensitivity to sunlight that would confine her to darkness, the political structures of vampire society that still existed in shadow. He told her about the Vampire King title he held, a mostly ceremonial position now, but one that still carried weight among the immortal community. He described the loneliness of watching mortal friends age and die, the strange displacement of living through centuries while the world transformed around you. Clara listened to all of it, asked countless questions, and thought deeply. She researched what information existed about vampire mythology, trying to separate fact from fiction with Mordecai's help. She considered what she would miss about being human, what she would grieve losing. Sunrises, her sister's aging face, the taste of chocolate and coffee, the simple ease of moving through the world without secrecy. But she also considered what she would gain. More time with Mordecai, this extraordinary person who had somehow walked into her life at its darkest moment. The chance to pursue her passion for art history across actual centuries. Freedom from the pain and weakness that had plagued her for months. The opportunity to simply exist without the shadow of approaching death. "I need to meet others," Clara said one night. "Other vampires. I need to understand what the community is like, who I would be joining." Mordecai was reluctant, protective, but he understood her reasoning. He sent word through old channels, and 2 nights later, 3 vampires arrived at the castle to meet Clara. The first was Seraphine Blackthorn, who appeared as a woman in her 20s with the same white hair and pale skin as Mordecai, dressed in elegant modern fashion. She had been turned in the 1920s and radiated the confidence of someone who had adapted well to immortality. The second was Lucian Ravenswood, turned during the Victorian era, scholarly and gentle-mannered, who worked as a rare book dealer and collector. The third was Isadora Nightshade, ancient and formidable, turned in the Renaissance, who regarded Clara with sharp assessment. They spoke with her for hours, answering her questions with a frankness that Mordecai appreciated. Seraphine described the freedom she had found in immortality, the ability to reinvent herself endlessly. Lucian talked about the intellectual joy of having unlimited time to study and learn. Isadora spoke more soberly about the costs, the loneliness, the burden of memory. "Do you regret it?" Clara asked each of them. "Being turned?" "Never," Seraphine said immediately. "Not for a single day," Lucian agreed. Isadora considered longer. "There have been dark periods," she admitted. "Times when the weight of centuries felt unbearable. But no, I do not regret it. Life, even immortal life, is precious. I have loved and lost, created and destroyed, witnessed wonders and horrors. I would not trade it for the brevity of mortality." After they left, Clara sat with Mordecai in silence for a long time. "They're happy," she said finally. "As happy as anyone is. This isn't some cursed existence. It's just a different kind of life." "It can be both," Mordecai said quietly. "Do not romanticize it, Clara. There is real darkness in immortality." "There's real darkness in mortality too," Clara pointed out. "I'm dying at 24. That's its own kind of horror." Mordecai could not argue with that. 3 weeks after Mordecai's revelation, Clara had another medical crisis. She collapsed during her shift, seizing, and woke in the hospital with her sister Rachel flying in from California. Rachel was 32, a lawyer, practical and forceful, and she was furious that Clara had hidden her deterioration. "Why didn't you tell me it was this bad?" Rachel demanded, tears streaming down her face. "I would have come sooner. I would have taken time off work. You shouldn't be going through this alone." "I'm not alone," Clara said weakly from the hospital bed. "I have friends here." "Like that man who's been waiting outside your room for 6 hours?" Rachel asked. "Mordecai something? He wouldn't give his last name. He looks like he walked out of a Gothic novel." Clara's heart leaped. "He's here? He showed up right after you were admitted, claimed to be your boyfriend. The nurses let him in since you have no other family listed." "Clara, who is he? I've never heard you mention anyone." "He's important to me," Clara said. "Very important. Can you send him in?" Rachel looked like she wanted to argue, but nodded. She left, and moments later Mordecai entered, looking haggard in a way Clara had never seen. His carefully maintained composure was cracked, fear evident in every line of his body. "Clara," he said, taking her hand. "I thought when they said you had seized—" "I'm okay," Clara said, though she clearly was not. "It's getting worse faster, isn't it?" "Yes," Mordecai said, seeing no point in lying. "Your brain is hemorrhaging. They have stabilized you for now, but it will happen again, soon." "Then I need to decide," Clara said. "Now. I can't wait anymore." "You are in a hospital bed, frightened and in pain," Mordecai said. "This is exactly the situation in which you cannot make a free choice." "Stop protecting me from myself," Clara said, her voice gaining strength. "Stop deciding what I'm capable of choosing. I've had 3 weeks to think about this, Mordecai. 3 weeks of learning everything I could, meeting other vampires, considering every angle. And here's what I know. I don't want to die. I'm not ready. I have too much I still want to do, too much life I want to live. And I love you. I love you so much that the thought of leaving you breaks my heart. So if there's a way for me to stay, to be with you, to have more time, I want it. Even if that way means becoming vampire," Mordecai pressed. "Even if it means blood and darkness and immortality with all its burdens?" "Yes," Clara said firmly. "Even then, I'm choosing this, Mordecai, not because I'm desperate, but because I've thought about it carefully and this is what I want. I want to live, and I want to live with you. And if becoming vampire is how that happens, then that's what I choose." Mordecai stared at her, searching her face for any hint of doubt or coercion. He saw only clarity, determination, and love. "Are you certain?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Absolutely certain. Because once I turn you, there is no going back. You will be vampire forever." "I'm certain," Clara said. "Turn me, save me, give me forever." Mordecai closed his eyes, relief and terror warring in his chest. "Not here. Not in a hospital where you are monitored. They would notice your transformation, the changes in your vital signs. You would be subjected to medical examination that would reveal what you have become." "Then we need to get out of here," Clara said. "Tonight." "You are too weak to move," Mordecai protested. "Then carry me," Clara said. "You're a vampire. Super strength, remember? Get me out of here, take me somewhere safe, and turn me before my brain hemorrhages again and takes the choice away from both of us." Mordecai looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "The garden," he said, "where we met, where you told your secret to the statue and I heard every word. That is where I will turn you, where this all began." He moved with purpose then, checking the hallway to ensure it was empty. He gathered Clara carefully into his arms, detached her from the monitors with swift efficiency, and moved through the hospital like a shadow, using speed and the vampiric ability to cloud mortal perception. Within minutes they were outside, moving through the night toward the castle. Rachel would find the empty bed and panic. The hospital would call the police. But by then it would be too late. Clara would be beyond their reach, beyond all mortal authorities. They reached the castle garden as the moon rose high and full. Mordecai carried Clara to the bench before the kneeling knight statue, the same bench where she had sat and confessed her death sentence 2 months before. "Here," Clara whispered. "This is perfect." Mordecai set her down gently, kneeling before her as the statue knight knelt. "I need to explain the process. I will bite you, drain you nearly to death, then you will drink my blood. The transformation will take 3 days. During that time, your body will die and remake itself. It will be painful, Clara, extraordinarily painful. Your entire physiology will be restructured at the cellular level. I will stay with you through all of it, but I cannot spare you the pain." "I understand," Clara said. "I'm ready." "One more thing," Mordecai said, taking both her hands. "After you turn, after you wake as vampire, if you hate what you have become, if you regret it the way Elowen did, I will not stop you from walking into the sun. I will not trap you in an existence you do not want. You will have the same choice she had, the same agency. I promise you that." "I won't regret it," Clara said with quiet conviction. "But thank you for giving me that choice." Mordecai nodded, then pulled her close. "I love you," he said against her hair. I will love you through all the centuries to come." "I love you too," Clara whispered. "Now please, save me." Mordecai tilted her head gently, exposing the pale column of her throat. His fangs extended, and he bit down carefully, precisely, finding the great vein and drinking. Clara gasped, her hands clutching at his shoulders. The pain was sharp at first, then faded into strange warmth, almost pleasurable. She felt her strength flowing out of her heartbeat slowing, darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision. Just before she lost consciousness, Mordecai pulled back. He bit his own wrist, tearing the flesh, and pressed it to her lips. "Drink," he commanded. "Drink and live." Clara's survival instinct took over. She drank, swallowing the strange cold blood that tasted of copper and power and eternity. It burned going down, lit fire in her veins, and then everything went black. Mordecai caught her as she collapsed, her heart giving one last weak flutter before stopping entirely. He lifted her carefully and carried her down to his chambers, laying her on his own bed. The transformation had begun. For 3 days, Clara's body waged war with death. Fever raged through her, her body convulsing as mortal systems shut down and immortal ones took their place. Her illness was purged, burned out of her cells as they restructured. Mordecai never left her side, cooling her burning skin with damp cloths, whispering reassurances even though he did not know if she could hear, forcing more of his blood between her lips when the process flagged. On the 2nd day, her hair began to bleach itself white, melanin draining away. Her skin paled to alabaster. Her canines loosened and fell out, replaced by retractable fangs. Her eyes, when they moved beneath closed lids, flickered with silver light. On the 3rd day, just before midnight, Clara's eyes opened. She gasped, sitting bolt upright, and the world exploded into overwhelming sensation. She could hear everything, the whisper of air in the ventilation system, the skitter of insects in the walls, Mordecai's unnecessary breathing beside her. She could smell the age of the stone, the musty scent of old books, and underneath it all, the rich, coppery smell of blood. Her vision was preternaturally sharp, seeing clearly in the dim room as if it were full daylight. "Mordecai," she said, and her voice was her own but richer, resonant with new power. "I am here," he said, taking her hand. "How do you feel?" Clara considered, taking inventory of her new body. "Strong," she said wonderingly. "So strong. And everything is so clear, so intense. I can hear your heartbeat. Can you even have a heartbeat if you're dead?" "We are not dead," Mordecai said with a small smile. "We are undead. The heart beats slowly, enough to move blood we drink through our system. Our lungs breathe from habit and to speak, not from need. We are creatures of animation, of suspended life." Clara looked down at her hands, now pale as moonlight, and touched her hair, finding it white as Mordecai's. "I look like you," she said. "You look like yourself," Mordecai corrected. "But yes, all vampires share certain characteristics. The paleness, the white hair, the reflective eyes. We are marked as apart from humanity." "I'm not human anymore," Clara said, testing the words. She waited for horror or regret, but felt only a strange rightness. "I'm vampire." "Yes," Mordecai said. "How do you feel about that?" Clara met his eyes, her own now shining silver. "Like I've come home," she said simply. "Is that strange? I feel more myself than I have in years, like I've been walking around in a body that didn't quite fit and now I've found the right one." Relief crashed through Mordecai so powerfully it left him shaking. "You do not regret it?" "Not even a little bit," Clara said. She threw her arms around him, and he caught her easily, marveling at her new strength. "Thank you. Thank you for saving me, for giving me this choice, for loving me enough to risk repeating your greatest pain." Mordecai held her close, centuries of grief and guilt finally beginning to ease. "You are not Alawan," he said. "You are Clara, and you are entirely yourself, and I love you beyond measure." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, until Clara's stomach cramped suddenly and she gasped. What was that? Hunger, Mordecai said. Your body needs blood. Come, I will teach you to feed. He brought her synthetic blood first, warming it to body temperature, and she drank it greedily, amazed at how satisfying it was, how it filled the empty spaces and made her feel complete. Afterward, he taught her to move with her new speed, to control her new strength, to extend and retract her fangs at will. This is incredible, Clara said, running the length of the chamber in an eye blink. I feel like I could do anything. You will need to learn restraint, Mordecai cautioned. Humans are fragile. You could kill someone accidentally now if you are not careful. You will need to hide what you are, maintain the fiction of humanity when you move in the mortal world. I'll learn, Clara said confidently. Teach me everything. Over the next weeks, Mordecai did exactly that. He taught Clara to pass as human, to control her predatory instincts, to navigate the modern world as an immortal. He introduced her properly to vampire society, and she was welcomed as the king's consort, a position of honor and protection. She learned the old laws, the codes of honor that governed vampire interactions, the careful balance they maintained with the mortal world. But there were loose ends to tie up. Clara's human death had been reported, her disappearance from the hospital investigated. Mordecai used his considerable resources and influence to create a trail suggesting Clara had fled the hospital in a delusional state and fallen into the river, her body swept away. It was a kind death, a clean story for her sister to grieve. Rachel held a memorial service, and Clara watched from the shadows, tears slipping down her alabaster cheeks for the life she had left behind. I'm sorry, Mordecai whispered, his arm around her. Don't be, Clara said. I chose this, and it was the right choice, but I'm still allowed to grieve what I've lost. Of course, Mordecai said. Grief is allowed. Grief is necessary. Months passed, and Clara grew into her new existence. She quit her job at the museum, no longer needing the income, and she and Mordecai traveled together through Europe, visiting the places he had lived throughout his long life. She learned languages with the accelerated facility of a vampire mind, studied art in the cities where it had been created, and felt her passion for history deepen with the knowledge that she now had centuries to pursue it. She was happy, genuinely, deeply happy in a way she had never expected to be. The darkness of immortality that everyone had warned her about felt distant, perhaps a problem for future centuries, but now, in these early years with Mordecai, there was only joy. 1 year after her turning, they returned to the castle garden. It was a cool autumn night, similar to the night they had met. Clara stood before the kneeling knight statue, Mordecai beside her. A year ago, I whispered my death sentence to this statue, Clara said. I told it I was dying, that I was scared and alone, and the vampire king standing behind it heard every word. And fell in love, Mordecai added. Do not forget that part. Clara smiled, turning to him. How could I? You saved my life. You gave me eternity. You saved mine as well, Mordecai said seriously. I have lived for 400 years, Clara, but I was not truly living. I was existing, enduring, alone in my guilt and grief. You brought me back to life. You taught me that love is worth the risk, that not all stories end in tragedy. Some end in gardens at midnight, Clara said softly, with marble knights as witnesses. Mordecai drew her close, kissing her with all the passion of a man who had found salvation in the least expected place. When they broke apart, he reached into his pocket and drew out a ring, antique gold set with a blood-red ruby. Clara Zimmerman who was, he said formally. Clara Morgrath who will be. Will you marry me? Will you stand beside me not just as consort, but as wife, my equal in all things, my partner through eternity? Clara's eyes filled with tears that she no longer needed to cry but chose to anyway. Yes, she said. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her across centuries of waiting. They sealed the engagement with another kiss, there in the garden where everything had begun. The wedding took place 6 months later in the castle's grand hall, attended by vampires from across Europe. Seraphine was maid of honor, elegant in midnight blue. Lucian officiated, reading vows that had been spoken at vampire weddings for 1,000 years. Isidora gave a blessing in Latin that made Clara cry happy tears, and when Mordecai kissed his bride, the assembled immortals cheered, their voices echoing through the ancient hall. The reception lasted until dawn, music and laughter filling the castle. Clara danced with her husband, with their guests, feeling more alive than she ever had as a mortal. When the sun began to threaten the horizon, Mordecai took her hand. "Come," he said, "I have something to show you." He led her up through the castle's winding stairs to a tower she had never entered. At the top was a room with walls of specially treated glass, designed to filter and weaken sunlight to a level vampires could tolerate. "I had this built for you," Mordecai said. "I know you mourned the loss of sunrises. This will not be the same as experiencing them as a human, but you will be able to watch them safely, to see the sun without being burned." Clara looked at him, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "You built me a sunrise room. I would build you anything," Mordecai said simply. "Ask, and it is yours." They sat together on the padded bench as the sun rose over the city spread below them. The light came through the glass, weakened, softened, but still beautiful, painting the clouds in shades of rose and gold. Clara leaned against her husband, his arm around her, and watched her first sunrise as a vampire. "It's different," she said softly. "Not bad, just different. Gentler, like a watercolor instead of oil paint." "But still beautiful?" Mordecai asked. "Still beautiful," Clara confirmed. "Everything is beautiful now. The world, our life, us. I never knew I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Mordecai admitted. "For so long I thought my story was tragedy, that Elawin's death defined me. But you have shown me a different ending. You have shown me that love can heal, that choices can be honored, that redemption is possible." Clara turned to him, the sunrise painting them both in gentle light. "We have forever to write new stories," she said. "Happy ones, together." "Forever," Mordecai agreed, kissing her as the sun climbed higher. "And it begins now." They sat together in their sunrise room, watching the day break over the city they would guard and live in for centuries to come. Clara thought of the dying girl who had whispered secrets to a statue, never imagining that her confession would lead to this: immortality, love, and a future stretching infinite before her. She thought of Elowin too, and sent a silent prayer to whatever afterlife held her, hoping that she had found peace and forgiveness. "Thank you," Clara whispered, though she was not sure if she was speaking to Mordecai, to Elowin's ghost, to the universe itself, or to all three. Mordecai heard anyway. "For what?" "For listening," Clara said. "For hearing my secret that night in the garden. For loving me. For giving me the choice that changed everything." "It was my privilege," Mordecai said, "and my salvation." They remained there as the sun climbed fully into the sky, two vampires watching the dawn they could not fully touch but could still appreciate, two immortals beginning their forever together. The city below them woke to a new day, bustling with mortal life, unaware of the ancient beings watching over them from the castle tower. In the garden far below, the marble knight still knelt in eternal supplication, guarding the secret of what had transpired in his shadow. If statues could smile, he might have, witnessing the happy ending that began with whispered confessions and eavesdropping kings. Clara and Mordecai eventually descended from their sunrise room, retreating to their chambers to sleep through the day as vampires must. They lay together in the great bed, safe in the darkness, wrapped in each other's arms. "I love you," Clara murmured, already drifting toward sleep. "I love you as well," Mordecai replied. "Today, tomorrow, and for all the endless days to come. Forever," Clara whispered, and then she slept, secure in the knowledge that forever was exactly what they had. The years that followed were full of joy and discovery. Clara pursued her passion for art with the dedication that centuries allowed, eventually becoming a renowned but reclusive expert on medieval and Renaissance works, publishing under various pseudonyms, never revealing that her expertise came from having lived through some of the eras she studied. She and Mordecai traveled extensively, returning always to the castle that was their home. They learned to navigate immortality together, weathering the challenges that came with eternal life. They grieved when Rachel aged and died, Clara watching her sister's funeral from a distance, unable to reveal that she still existed. They celebrated small joys, the discovery of a new artist Clara loved, the acquisition of a rare manuscript for Mordecai's collection, quiet nights in the garden where they had met. The vampire community came to respect and admire their partnership, pointing to them as proof that the old ways of turning without consent were not the only path, that chosen immortality could create strong and happy vampires. Other kings and queens sought Mordecai's counsel, and Clara became known for her wisdom in helping newly turned vampires adjust to their new existence. 50 years after Clara's turning, they stood together in the garden once more, still appearing as they had on the night of her transformation. The castle had been expanded, the museum holdings increased, but the sculpture garden remained unchanged, a preserved sanctuary. "Do you ever regret it?" Mordecai asked, a question he had asked many times over the decades, always needing reassurance. "Never," Clara said, as she always did, "not for one moment. This life with you is everything I could have wanted and more than I ever dreamed possible." "I am glad," Mordecai said, "because you are everything to me, my salvation, my joy, my eternal companion." "And you are mine," Clara said. She looked at the kneeling knight statue, as familiar now as an old friend. "I should thank him, you know. If I hadn't whispered my secret that night, if you hadn't heard, we might never have found each other. Then I am grateful to all the coincidences and chances that brought us together," Mordecai said. "Grateful that you chose to work night shifts. Grateful that you loved this garden. Grateful that I happened to be standing in the right shadow at the right moment. Grateful that you had the courage to reveal yourself," Clara added, "that you trusted me with your secret in return." "How could I not?" Mordecai asked. "You trusted me with yours." They walked together through the garden as they had countless times, hands linked, moving among the statues and fountains in comfortable silence. Above them the moon shone full and bright, bathing everything in silver light. It was the same moon that had shone the night they met, the night Clara's life had ended and begun again. "Tell me again," Clara said suddenly, "about the first moment you saw me. Before the statue, before the confession. When did you first notice me?" Mordecai smiled, indulging her request as he had many times. "It was 3 weeks before that night. You were leading a late tour, and I was in the shadows of the portrait gallery. You stopped before a painting of a woman from the 17th century, and you told the group that you had always wondered what she was thinking when she sat for the portrait. You said she had eyes that held secrets, and you wished you could ask her what they were. The way you spoke, with such genuine curiosity and compassion for someone who had been dead for 300 years, it captivated me. I began to watch for you after that, drawn to your passion for history, for art, for the lives lived before yours. And I had no idea I was being observed by a vampire king," Clara said, amused. "I was very subtle," Mordecai said with mock dignity. "You were a stalker," Clara teased. "A romantic observer," Mordecai corrected. Clara laughed, the sound musical in the quiet garden. "However you want to phrase it, I'm glad you were there. Glad you watched. Glad you listened when I needed someone to hear me most. I will always listen," Mordecai promised. "For as long as we both exist, I will hear you, see you, and cherish you." "That's going to be a very long time," Clara said. "Indeed it is," Mordecai agreed. "Are you prepared for that? For centuries of my company?" "I think I can manage," Clara said, kissing him softly. "After all, you're reasonably tolerable." "Reasonably tolerable," Mordecai repeated. "Such high praise from my wife." "I could say more," Clara offered. "I could wax poetic about your many virtues, your wisdom and kindness, and the way you look in moonlight." "Please do," Mordecai encouraged. "I am listening." So Clara did, there in the garden under the moon, telling her husband all the ways she loved him, all the reasons she was grateful for the immortality they shared. And Mordecai listened, as he always did, treasuring every word. When she finished, he responded in kind, listing all the ways she had changed his existence, brought light to his darkness, healed wounds he had thought permanent. They spoke the language of love that they had developed over decades, private and precious, a conversation that could continue for centuries and never grow old. Eventually, they returned to their chambers, to the life they had built together in shadow and secrecy. They had forever stretching before them, infinite nights to fill with love and learning, with travel and discovery, with quiet moments and grand adventures. Clara had whispered a secret to a garden statue, never knowing that the vampire king behind it would hear every word and change her fate. But knowing now, looking back across the years, she could only be grateful for that moment, that confession, that chance encounter that had saved her life and given her eternity. And Mordecai, who had carried guilt and grief for over a century, had finally found redemption in a dying girl's choice, in her courage to embrace immortality with open eyes and a willing heart. She had forgiven him for his past by showing him a different future, had proved that turned vampires could be happy when given agency and choice. Together, they were proof that love could transcend mortality, that choices honored led to joy, that even ancient beings could find new beginnings. Their story, which had started with whispered secrets and hidden kings, had become a legend among vampires, a testament to hope and the transformative power of love. And it was far from over. With eternity ahead of them, Clara and Mordecai had only just begun writing their story. The chapters that followed would be filled with continued devotion, with challenges overcome together, with the deep abiding love of two souls who had found each other against impossible odds. In the garden, the marble knight kept his eternal vigil, guardian of the spot where everything had changed. And if statues could remember, he would recall the dying girl's whispered confession, the vampire king's silent witness, and the love story that had bloomed from that moment of vulnerability and connection. The moon continued its arc across the sky, shining down on the castle and its immortal inhabitants, lighting their path forward into the endless night of forever, together.